residents, businesses, and our ability to get back onto our feet post-COVID. As you know, in 2019, the governor and the state legislature passed a congestion pricing plan. They gave the authority to the MTA to set the details, including how much people will be whacked over the head for this congestion pricing fee to enter Manhattan below 60th Street. Now, this is something we are deeply concerned about, and we're here in a bipartisan manner. Happy to be joined by Josh Gottheimer of New Jersey, and of course, I'm Nicole Mallitotakis representing Staten Island and Southern Brooklyn. Very concerned about the impact that this is going to have on our city, on the residents that I represent in Staten Island, Southern Brooklyn, and on our city's ability to get back on its feet economically post-COVID. We should be doing more to incentivize people to come into Manhattan and come into our city. What the leaders of our city and state continue to do is urge people basically not to come into Manhattan, not to enjoy our city's restaurants and theaters and shopping experiences. And this is another example of just that. I represent a community that is very sensitive to tolling. Okay, the people of Staten Island already pay $5.50 to connect to the rest of the city. To now hit them over the head with another fee that could be as high as $23 to enter another borough in the city in which they live is absolutely unacceptable. And we're here today in bipartisan opposition to this congestion pricing scheme, which is nothing more than the latest cash grab of the MTA, and it's nothing more than the latest war on cars by the city and the state. We need the help of the public, and what we're asking the public to do is to join our efforts to stop this. Now, a couple of things that Josh and I have already done. One thing that we're doing is putting in legislation to require that there's a thorough economic impact statement that is done to provide more transparency to the public about the impacts and consequences that congestion pricing will have to the workers, residents, and businesses. Think about what they're trying to do here. They're trying to ram through this first-in-the-nation program without doing a complete environmental impact statement or an economic impact study to see what the ramifications are. That is completely irresponsible. And we want the Federal Highways Administration that has a say. They get to do the final sign-off here. We want them to require that the MTA do a thorough economic impact and environmental assessment to see what the consequences will be. We've also introduced legislation that would require the MTA to give individuals who pay an existing toll to connect to the rest of the city, like those I represent in Staten Island, toward any congestion pricing fee. The people of Staten Island should not be double tolled, and I'm sure Josh feels the same way about his constituents. But in Staten Island, we're connected to this city, and now we're going to have to pay not one, but 2 tolls to connect to another borough in our city. That is unacceptable. And again, to hit Staten Islanders with a second toll, we should receive a credit for any toll we already paid, meaning the Verrazano Bridge, towards any congestion pricing fee. But what we're also doing is we've been working diligently to draft new legislation that would require the Office of the Inspector General for the U.S. Department of Transportation to audit the MTA for the billions of dollars that they receive in funding, particularly upwards of $7 billion they received in COVID relief funds. And we want that audit to take place. And we want to know, and we want the public to know, and we want the MTA to be transparent, quite frankly, of where all these billions that they're receiving from the federal government is going to. So what we want is for the public to please join us. The next month is critical in this fight to stop congestion pricing. There's a comment period where beginning now through September 10th, you can go online to mta.info/cbdtp On there, you'll see the dates where you can testify at one of the public hearings beginning August 25th, or at the bottom, when you scroll to the bottom of it, there's ways that you can submit online comments to the MTA and the Federal Highway Administration. So we want the message to be very clear. We do not want congestion pricing. It's going to be costly on our businesses, on our residents, going to impact tourism when we're trying to get our city back on its feet. But we also demand, as the public, transparency and the due diligence that this first in the nation program deserves. And that means that we want the Federal Highway Administration to require the MTA to conduct a thorough and full, a complete analysis, economic impact study, as well as environmental impact study. Because we know, just anyone would know, that if you're charging more to come into Manhattan, it's going to have a detrimental impact on our city's economy. But environmentally speaking, we believe, and as is shown in cities like London, that the congestion is just going to be shifted. It's just going to be shifted to right over the boundaries of this, and it's going to clog up neighborhoods surrounding the congestion zone. So it's really not going to do too much to eliminate the number of cars and the number of congestion. It's just going to shift it. And so that's what we believe will happen, and we want a full and thorough analysis that will prove us otherwise. I'd like to introduce my colleague from New Jersey, Josh Gottheimer.
Thank you, Nicole. Nicole, thanks for welcoming me over here. It's good to be in New York. Rather be in Jersey. But, you know, we had to come to the home of the absurd congestion tax to talk about it. If the report the MTA released proved anything last week, it's that the bureaucratic and woefully mismanaged agency sees hardworking Jersey and New York residents literally as their piggy bank. So I brought a piggy bank because I think this proves the point of how the MTA sees Jersey, how they see the outer boroughs and hardworking Americans here in the area. Every congestion tax, the scenario the MTA released last week, will whack Jersey drivers with a new tax. I know it's going to do the same to Nicole's drivers. It's why we brought this piggy bank as a gift for the MTA. We're going to send it over to them. And as long as we're around, we will fight to make sure this is literally the only dollar the MTA gets through a congestion tax. I want them to appreciate this because we're going to fight for this every ounce of our being here. It's also the only dollar the MTA will get from the federal government if it barrels ahead with the $23 a day or $5,000 a year congestion tax it's planning to whack hardworking Jersey and New York commuters with as soon as next year. Again, just for driving south of 60th, right? So this area here, they come right in here, they get hit with $23 a day. Mind you, that's on top of the $16 you pay for tolls, right? $4,000 a year that families have to pay to just go over the GW Bridge or through the Lincoln Tunnel or the Holland, and I know you have the same thing on your crossings. They get hit, and then they're going to get hit with this additional $23 a day or $5,000 a year. Put aside, by the way, parking around here. I don't know if you've ever tried to park. Many of you have. How expensive it is. Put aside what gas is. It's ridiculous. We're talking about $20,000 a year total when you add up all these costs between the toll, between the congestion tax, between gas and parking. You'd think that New York, especially the mayor and governor here, would do everything they could right now to get all of the nearly 290,000 daily New Jersey commuters back to supporting their businesses and local economy. If I were a small business owner that depends on people working and visiting New York, or someone who commutes every day, I'd be losing my mind over the congestion tax. But I guess they're too blinded by the cash grab for their mismanaged MTA. That's why Nicole and I have both introduced legislation, as she just said. First, to stop the mismanaged MTA in its tracks. My anti-congestion tax legislation would literally freeze all federal dollars sent annually to the MTA. In other words, defund the MTA if it decides to go ahead and move forward with this congestion tax. And remember, as Nicole said, the MTA got nearly $15 billion during emergency relief during COVID to help them through it, right? $15 billion with a B. And what did they do with all that money? They seem to have blown it, like they were like on an all-night bender. You wouldn't believe how badly run the MTA is. In just the first 3 months of this year, they lost $119 million to fare evasion, heading toward $500 million this year. These are self-inflicted losses that have nothing to do with the pandemic. Not to mention, not too long ago, a former MTA manager pleaded guilty to obstructing an investigation to bid rigging and fraud. This is just one of the countless investigations into the MTA's bureaucratic, mismanaged swamp. That's why we're here today, to stand up for hardworking Jersey and New York drivers who will soon face the MTA's cash-grabbing congestion tax. We're introducing bipartisan legislation that will require the DOT's Office of Inspector General to conduct a full audit of the MTA to see exactly where the billions of federal dollars they received over the last years, including COVID, where they've gone. It's time we audit the MTA that keeps pouring the billions we've sent them into a black hole. We can't continue to give this terribly mismanaged government authority billions that are unchecked, and that's what this legislation we'll be introducing does. The last thing a terribly mismanaged government authority needs, one that's riddled with investigations and fraud, is more money. So that's why I've said last week, just read MTA spelled backwards, and it tells you everything you need to know. ATM. That's what they think of Jersey. They think we're their ATM machine. Every nickel of the new congestion tax imposed on hardworking Jersey families, from nurses to taxi drivers to hospital patients, will go to New York's MTA. Not a cent goes to Jersey to the PATH train or New Jersey Transit to actually help our state in any way. I'm not sure what's going to Staten Island, but I guarantee you they're not pouring money into Staten Island here. For those who say, why not just take public transit, and Nicole and I have talked about this, the answer is simply, unfortunately for many people, at least who live in northern New Jersey, there just aren't many mass transit options. I want people to understand that. I know this is an issue for Staten Island as well. For far too many, it's a mass transit desert, right? And for the naysayers, I'm happy to take people on a tour of Jersey, northern Jersey. If you want to come, I'll show you how there just aren't mass transit options available for people. People just have to commute. That nurse has to commute. They have no choice. You know, and I'll even give you some decent pizza and bagels while you're there. And another thing,
That's good, though. Better in my district.
Well, we can have that fight, but I'll tell you, we're going to start right now by fighting congestion tax, right? Then we'll do a pizza swap. Last thing, I'm calling on EasyPass, the multi-state toll consortium, to immediately cease and desist with its Soviet-era propaganda campaign, where they are literally sending blast emails lying about the congestion tax to their millions of EasyPass holders. In one of their recent propaganda emails, they rave about how great these fees will be for those commuting south of 60th. But they conveniently left out the congestion tax cost, how it will kill small businesses in New York City, how it's going to hurt hardworking families, how it will make traffic horrifically worse north of 60th Street and at the bridges and tunnels commuters take to the city. These government propaganda emails are an egregious misuse of personal email addresses and taxpayer resources. Again, I'm calling on EasyPass to immediately cease and desist their disinformation campaign. And finally, as Nicole said, please, to folks, submit your comments. Let your voice be heard here. There's virtual public hearings starting on August 25th. You can email your comments to cbdtp@mtabt.org or go to my Twitter or Facebook page or our website where we've posted all this information. You can comment and let people know just how much this will affect you and hurt your family and your pocketbooks. Listen, when we work together like we do on the Port Authority, there's nothing that can stop New York and New Jersey working together as a team. We've done it for 100 plus years as the Port Authority. We share, working together, right? This is just a one-sided cash grab from the MTA. This is New York going it alone. I encourage them to get a more cooperative spirit, to build on the strength of our two states working together, because there's nothing that can stop us when we do. Thanks so much, and God bless. Take care.